What's up guys, I'm KBHD here, and this is your first look at Samsung's new highest-end flagship, the one we've been talking about, the one the rumors focused on. It's here. It's the Galaxy S20 Ultra. Now there's a whole new lineup of Samsung phones all coming out at once. I've dropped an entire separate video on the Galaxy S20 and Galaxy S20 Plus, which are the true successors to the S10 and S10 Plus. Matter of fact, watch that video first. And when you're done watching that, come back to this one and brace yourself, because pretty much everything I say here is going to be based off of that video. So go ahead, pause this one, and then come back. I'll wait. Okay, welcome back. So now that you've seen the Galaxy S20 and S20 Plus, they've come out with this S20 Ultra, which is this crazy spec king, bleeding edge, highest end possible phone they could make on paper. And it's also the most expensive, starting at $1,400 bucks. So let's go ahead and take a look at what you get for that money. So the design, as you can see, still clearly in the S20 family. And in fact, you can pretty much take everything from the S20s. That still applies here. Same design, same water resistance, same materials, same colors, but just bump everything up a notch from excellent to insane, literally everything. The display is a little bit bigger. It's a 6.9 inch 120 hertz quad HD OLED display, which is nuts. It's bigger than any Galaxy Note they've ever made. It's just absolutely massive to have that nearly 7-inch screen in your pocket. Remember, the iPad mini had a 7.9 inch display. So this is huge. And then with the super thin bezels and the small center hole punch cutout, I think it's safe to say this is the best display on a phone right now, or when it comes out. It also has that 240 hertz touch response to match, which is twice as fast as before, and you can absolutely notice all this stuff as different from any slower display. I've said it before, it's hard to show the difference in a 30 FPS YouTube video, but in person, the smoothness is incredible. And then this phone is also physically bigger in a bunch of other ways too, as you could tell. The main one being the battery. It's a 5,000 milliamp hour battery now in the S20 Ultra, which sounds pretty impressive, but the more you think about it, the more that sounds like about right to power a nearly 7-inch 120 hertz bright OLED display. So they got that bigger battery in there, and the phone is a bit thicker too. Now, it's not like a chunkster like the ROG phone or anything like that, but you can see it's got some more size to it. And on top of that, literally, the camera bump is a bit thicker on the S20 Ultra. It's actually more of like a double camera bump, like a plateau with another bump on top of it. It's not a huge deal, and it doesn't actually really change the way you use the phone, but I figured I'd point that out if you care a lot about the way it rocks on a table. But we'll talk more about the cameras in a little bit. The specs are also bigger, if you could believe that. Same Snapdragon 865 and 128 gigs of base storage, but again, up to half a terabyte internal plus micro SD card expansion for up to another terabyte, and 12 or 16 gigabytes of RAM, which is just hilarious on a phone. And the Ultra also supports up to 45 watt fast charging, unlike the 25 watt max of the S20s and what's included in the box. I also mentioned in the S20 video that the whole lineup now is 5G capable, which is true, but now the S20 and S20 Plus are just doing sub 6, where the S20 Ultra also adds millimeter wave on top of this. So, I mean, this affects a very small number of people, so if you're in that small group of people, good to know, but I probably still wouldn't buy this phone just for 5G. But hey, if you're in that group, good to know. So they keep stacking little extra things here and there on top of the already impressive S20s, which brings us to, I guess, the most important part of the phone, the most ultra part of the phone, which is those cameras. So you're getting a quad camera setup on the back again, but it is, again, stepped up from the S20s. So now on the S20 Ultra, the main camera is a 108 megapixel sensor. I made a whole video about this already, and I'll link it below. Then you have a 12 megapixel ultra wide, a depth sensor, and then this square one, or rectangular one at the bottom here that says space zoom, that is your 48 megapixel 10x hybrid optic telephoto lens. So to do this, they've turned the lens inside the phone sideways, kind of very similar to what we saw Huawei do with their periscope lens. Samsung's calling theirs a folded zoom lens. But basically just know it's a solid amount of glass and mirrors making this amount of zoom possible. And yeah, 10x zoom plus the 10x multiplier of software will get you a ridiculous 100x hybrid zoom. And on top of all of that, you do get 8K 24 FPS video on the main camera without the punch-in that I talked about with the regular S20. Oh, and the selfie camera on the front goes from 10 megapixels to 40 megapixels. Okay then. There's a lot of just big numbers happening here. I don't know how much you're actually going to use 100 times zoom. I don't know what you're doing with your periscope out your window with your smartphone camera. I don't know, but you're able to do that. And 100 megapixels and all this stuff. I think this number on paper offers the biggest possible delta between what we're seeing on paper and what the actual experience can be. Meaning, I've preached for years that you don't need big numbers to give a good experience. Pixel and iPhone for years have had the best smartphone cameras with 12 megapixel cameras. So does Samsung dropping a 108 megapixel camera that just does pixel binning when it needs to be 12 megapixels automatically mean it's better? No, of course not. There's still all kinds of other things. There's focus speed and dynamic range and color science and all this other stuff. So it's interesting to see. But if we're being real, the rest of the stuff about this phone, I kind of already feel like I know is great. You know, the 120 hertz display is awesome. And the generally familiar design I think is still nice too. It is definitely still a fingerprint magnet, but I like the new button layout. I like the fact that they're going back to a much flatter display instead of curving over the edges. Just a lot of stuff like that all in one place, plus the software improvements, all make it really hard to not like this phone. Basically, Ultra is Samsung's version of Pro. Like, they don't throw that Pro word around as gratuitously as some other manufacturers do right now, but this is their top of the line in all the same ways. And I have a pretty good feeling all these numbers, 120 hertz, 45 watts, 5,000 milliamp hours, 16 gigs, 108 megapixels, like, they should translate pretty well. Now, the question of will they all come together to be worth that $13.99 starting price? That's something that remains to be seen. That's what we're going to figure out when we get it in hand and test it for the full review. So definitely get subscribed to see that if you haven't already. But I'm really looking forward to it. But until the next one, feel free to let me know, which one are you guys more into? Is it the Ultra or the regular S20s? Or maybe it's the flippy screen one. Leave a comment. Let me know.